Well, that went about as expected. Not surprised. Back to formal reactions after two live stream reactions. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed those. I had fun doing it. Plus, it meant I didn't have to do any editing. I just got to talk about it. And I got to talk about the league as well. So that was great. But, anyways, back to the normal, typical reactions you guys are used to. Bears lose 35-13 at home against the Buffalo Bills. That is a tough one. And it's about as expected for the matchup between an 11-3 Buffalo team and a 3-11 Chicago team. And well, the Bears actually looked pretty good on their opening drive. They scored a touchdown. Justin Fields threw a pretty nice pass to Dante Pettis, who came down with a catch. Somehow he made a catch, caught another touchdown. That's his third of the year? I don't know. I can remember three off the top of my head. It may have more. But that's at least number 3. And Pettis has been so hit or miss. He's had some great plays, and he had that great touchdown catch against Washington. But outside of that, he has been really bad and has been dropping quite a handful of passes. Just isn't making plays and dropping the easy ones. So seeing that he was able to make that easy catch, good for him. But that would be the best moment of the game for the Bears. Because Buffalo would then... Well, Buffalo's did score a touchdown in the first half on a Josh Allen pass to, I believe, Gabe Davis. Tyler Bass missed the extra point. Okay. Bears would tack on a field goal and would lead 10-6 at half. A very similar score to what they saw last week against Philadelphia. Well, we know how that game went. This one was not the same. Well, Philly found their footing in the second half against the Bears last week and came out with the win. The Buffalo Bills found their footing and excelled through the second half, and their defense really stepped up, holding the Bears to just 3 points in the second half. It was just an agonizing second half to watch. And yeah, I was laughing by the end of the game. I'll tell you what. Look, when Josh Allen on that fourth down play in the last 5 minutes threw that touchdown pass to Dawson Knox, I just bursted out laughing. I was just like, dude, it's just so funny how bad they are that they can't even stop a fourth down. When the opposing team is up by several scores and doesn't need the score by any means. I don't know. It was just bad. It was just such a terrible second half. And, well, the final score was what we expected out of the game. Took a bit of an interesting turn to get to that final score, but the second half was more like what most people expected as opposed to the first half. And really for the second straight week, Fields didn't really have an intercepted pass a pass that really should have been intercepted. I think. Maybe he did. I don't know. But Fields looked pretty good in this game. But the key point to Buffalo really getting us off the field quick was limiting Fields' running ability and making him have to throw it. And if this offense has shown anything, receivers can't get open. Fields is continuously scrambling. He's either dumping it off, rink-a-dink, 2-yard completions, completion behind the line of scrimmage, just really short completions because that's all they can get. Because if the receivers run farther than 10 yards, they're covered all the way and Fields has to scramble. Except for one play deep in the second half, I believe in the third quarter. No, it was the final play of the third quarter. I think it was the first play of the drive. I don't know. It was a first down. And Fields heaves up a perfect ball to Velus Jones, who has had some interesting plays this season so far. That's the first time he's really come through on a big play. Granted, it really meant nothing because the Bears, I think, didn't score any points. Or maybe that was the drive that they actually scored their field goal. But regardless, first really big catch for Velus Jones. And it went for, I think, over 50 yards. It was a great ball, and it was great concentration from Velus Jones to go down and get that ball. That play was executed great, and a great catch from Jones. Fields put it in a great place where in double coverage only Jones could make the catch. And that right there is what I'm really looking for in these last two games. this type of experimentation, letting Fields maybe try and throw into double coverage once or twice. Granted, it's not going to work because he doesn't have the receivers to try and that can make those types of catches on a regular basis. But that's what I really want to see in these last couple of games because, let's be real, team's going to go ahead and get the 2 overall pick. Now, they very well actually could get the first overall pick in the draft. If they lose these last 2 games to Detroit and Minnesota, which they're going to lose because, one, Detroit needs this game. They may beat Minnesota depending on whether they rest starters or not. But even then, they're probably still going to lose. But if they lose both their games, Houston end their season with 3 divisional games. They just beat the Titans to get their second win of the year. Their only other win on the year is against Jacksonville, who desperately needs this win before their matchup with Tennessee in Week 18. Houston beats, let's say Houston loses to Jacksonville. If Houston beats Indy in the final week of the year, their tie with Indy in Week 1 will give them the edge for the number 2 pick and will give us the edge for the number 1 overall pick in the draft. How weird would that be? The Texans would lose out on the first overall pick. Granted, it's not going to do anything because we are not going to select Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick. It's not happening. We've seen too much development from Justin Fields to give up on him now. This whole season, these last couple games are specifically to try and build on Fields. I'll get to that in a moment. But the whole thing with next year is, and this offseason, is getting the pieces to support Justin Fields and try to build this team and really try to rebuild effectively with the amount of cap space, with the draft position, and get those players that can get this team to a playoff berth. Because the Vikings have looked great this year. They've gotten pretty lucky with 1-score games. They're, I think, 11-0 now. They just pulled off the biggest comeback in NFL history a couple weeks back. So they're rolling this season. They're going to be an issue, potentially. If Minnesota continues to get this kind of luck, they could very well win the Super Bowl. That is if they continue to have this luck. It's the Vikings. I know some people are saying it's the Vikings. It's not going to happen. But stranger things have happened in this league. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl against Tom Brady. Remember that. Blake Bortles played Tom Brady in an AFC Championship game. Remember that. God, that was 5 years ago. And Case Keenum was in the NFC Championship that year for the Vikings. What in the world was that year? But the Vikings really have the pieces to go make a Super Bowl run. The Lions do scare me for next season, though. This entire division has put up a very good fight here at the end of the season. The Vikings kind of ran away with this division to a point where they couldn't lose the division lead, really. But the way that both Detroit and Green Bay have played at the tail ends of the year are setting up for not only a great Week 18 matchup in Lambeau, but potentially great seasons for them next year. So this division could potentially get very tough very quickly, and the Bears need to adapt and get some pieces so they can get a couple key division wins that can help them try and propel them into a playoff spot via tiebreaker or something like that. I don't know. But it all depends with what teams do in the offseason. Who knows what Green Bay does? They're at a really big crossroads right now if they don't make the playoffs this year. And they got both Minnesota and Detroit. They've got our schedule, but just flipped. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do. Detroit, I think, is in a great position. Jared Goff's really found his footing in Detroit now, and they could potentially be a very dangerous team next season. Dare I say, win the division. I know, hasn't happened since the early 90s. But you know what? This is the NFL. Streaks are meant to be broken. I don't know where I'm going. But let's talk about Detroit and Minnesota for the next 2 games for the Bears. I think the thing that frustrated me most in this game against Buffalo was the very conservative play calling, especially in the second half. When they got down, they didn't try to go aggressive. They didn't try any risks. They were very safe with their play calling, and plenty of drives stalled out because they get the ball, run, incompletion, punt. We're used to seeing this. I mean, this is how there are several drives that go like this, and that's one thing that Eberflus needs to stop doing. because they'll run up the middle twice, get maybe a net, or no, they'll run a toss play, then they'll run up the middle, and they'll have like a net loss of 1, and they have to throw it, and Justin Fields, or well, actually, Justin Fields could work some magic, but Bills were doing really well, and the receivers couldn't get open, so it's an incomplete pass, and boom, that's it, punt. So I thought that the conservative play calling was terrible. I think that they need to be a little bit more aggressive, even if it's going to result in some picks and some turnovers, because that's what these final 2 weeks are going to be for, to try and prepare you for next season, to try and be more aggressive in this league that is consistently getting more and more aggressive. I mean, you used to, even really only even 5-6 years ago, you were really only seeing fourth downs in the fourth quarter or at the end of the half when they're trying to score. But most of the time, they were just going to punt or kick the field goal. Very safe play calling even 5-6 years ago. I can't really pinpoint one coach, but I want to say Sean McVay. I don't think it is Sean McVay. Yeah, it could be right, it could be wrong. But there was some coach and someone who had a revolutionary play style that revolved around being a little bit more aggressive. And over time, more and more coaches are getting hired. Now more and more of the seasoned coaches are getting more aggressive in their play calling. Somewhat. This league is turning from a more safe, try and just play by the rules type of thing, and turning into a way more aggressive league with deeper passes, going for it on 4th and 6 at the 50. They're going for these types of things, and I think that's something the Bears need to try out this next 2 weeks, because even if they try to be safe and try and play their best, they're probably not winning. They need to be aggressive if they want to have a sniff of a chance of winning these games. So why not be aggressive? If it blows up in your face, it blows up in your face. That's what these 2 weeks are going to be for. I think that's a good way of looking at these last 2 weeks. Try some new things, experiment a little, stretch the field, try something new, try some different plays, and if it blows up and you suck, you suck. You've been sucking all year. Nothing new would happen. But if you continue to go with these conservative play callings and don't let Justin Fields really throw the ball have more than 10 air yards, then he's not going to progress as a passer. Look, that's the last key for Justin Fields to become a grade A quarterback. He's got the flashy running nature. Granted, who knows how long he's going to have it, because the league's probably going to pick up on that stuff. Lamar Jackson is still a great runner, even though the league knows he's a great runner. His high skill should be able to produce some big runs, but if he can't develop for an NFL level passer, then he's just a glorified running back. He was a great passer at Ohio State. Granted, he had great receivers in Chris Olave. I believe Garrett Wilson was on those teams. Jackson Smith and Jigba, who the Bears could pick up with the 2nd overall pick. It depends on what they do in free agency and what positions they decide to go after. I think that will decide who they pick at the 2nd overall pick, whether it be Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, or receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I think for me, what really appeals the Jackson Smith and Jigba pick would be a solid receiver that Justin Fields already has chemistry with. And we've already seen that has worked in Cincinnati with Burrow and Chase. Now, I'm not trying to be like, oh, let's chase that trend and try to start putting receivers from college teammates together and see if they gel together. Because it doesn't always work that way. But I feel like trying to it depends on what the two of them did in college. I haven't watched enough film of the two of them to really make a decision on whether or not they feel like they would really gel well. But I think he'd be a great pick if they don't decide to go for receivers in free agency and they decide to bulk up on the defensive end or with an offensive lineman. So there's a lot of positions there's a lot of ways they can go about the 2nd overall pick. But the great thing about that pick is you have the entire board outside of Bryce Young probably. Okay, so what? We don't need Bryce Young. So it's not a big deal if we don't get the 1st overall pick. Point is, they need to try some new things, even if the receiving core sucks, even if Justin Fields throws a couple picks. They need to experiment, stretch the field, try and develop Fields as a passer and get him comfortable throwing the ball a little bit more downfield, because he's had he's had some really good deep throws in the past handful of games. Let me tell you, it's not a Foles or Trubisky situation where we're overthrowing our deep balls by 10 yards. We're actually hitting some of these now. It's insane. It's crazy to think about. We're actually hitting some deep passes. But, I'd like to see it not have to be these 50-yard bombs once a game. I'd like to try out with some 10 to 20 type yard passes where the ball has like 10 to 20 air yards, because it's deep enough to get a first down pretty much with a catch, but it's not deep enough to be considered like, a bomb, that just a screw it, someone's down there somewhere, hopefully. So there's a lot that can be said about the passing game, and it sucks that they have no great receivers, and Mooney's out for the season, and Claypool I think might be out for the season as well. So not only is Fields going to struggle as a passer because the receiving corps sucks, but it sucks even worse now because the top 2-3 receivers are out for this team. So we're relying on Dante Pettis. Equity St. Brown, I don't even think he played against Buffalo. I don't even know if he's going to be playing for the rest of the year. Dante Pettis, N'Keal Harry was out, I think. So those four, Dante Pettis is probably our top receiver right now. You tell me what needs to happen on the receiving corps, because I think there's a lot that needs to happen. When right now in week 17, Dante Pettis is our number one receiver. Granted, injuries, it's a glaring red flag on one of the major issues on this team. So yeah, there's a couple things that I just kind of wanted to throw in here. The game was as predictable in the second half as you could get. First half was kind of nice. They were winning. But we all knew that was going to kind of slip away and kind of take the course that it usually does. The script writers were not going to try and risk Buffalo losing, so they weren't going to have that happen. So, yeah, that's all I got. Detroit and Minnesota next 2 weeks. There you go. And I will say before I go, I totally skipped over this. Defense has had 3 takeaways in 2 straight games, and those are the current 1 seeds in each conference. That's impressive. I really liked what I see there. Kyler Gordon got an interception again. I think that's his 2nd straight game with a pick. 3rd on the year. And if he's just a rookie, and if he's struggling this year and still had 3 picks, it could be very, very good news once he develops. And I think that's what's super nice about this year as well, for Brisker and Gordon to get some NFL action so they can improve their game going forward, get some of those mistakes out. Rookie mistakes, because you know what? It's their first year in the league. It's a totally different beast than college football. It really is. But yeah, 3 takeaways in 2 straight games against the current 1 seeds in each conference. That's impressive considering how banged up our defensive back is. So I was very impressed with the defensive effort. Of course, there were no points scored off of those turnovers in this game. So didn't really matter much, but you know what? It's the thought and it's the actual act of doing the thing that really counts. And also, I got to give a shout out to Jalen Jones. I believe that's his name, number 31. Played very well. I thought he played very well in that game. He held Stephon Diggs when he needed to. I was kind of impressed with his coverage because he actually had a pretty good game. And Stephon Diggs was just held to pretty much nothing. I was really surprised. But anyways, there's your defensive spotlight. I've been ratting on the defense a lot this season, especially after the Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith trades. But this is the best they've looked since those trades. And it might be good to have that type of momentum going into the next season as we can try and rebuild this defensive front. Anyways, that's all I've got. I appreciate you sticking around and watching to the end here. 2 more games and the season is finally over. Oh, cannot believe I have had to cover every game for both the Hawks and the Bears in some of their worst seasons ever. Yeah.
Anyways, that's it for me. If you liked it, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you really like this one, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.